I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Yeah, it does, Bill. Welcome in. It's the daily puck drop every single day. We do it at 10 a.m. We give you 30 to 40 to 50 to an hour and 30 minutes of sports content. We are inside the Lindback Lumber Studios. Contractors, they got free deliveries, everything from whole house packages to homeowner DIY projects. Largest stock moldings in the Northwest, old school service. They've been doing it since 1930. Give them a call, 206-782-3487. Visit them online, limbacklumber.com. Follow on all the social media platforms. We got a bunch. X and Instagram and Blue Sky, all at Puck Sports. TikTok, Puck_sports. Facebook, Puck Sports there as well. We put all of our sound bites up on all those social media platforms after the show. Also, Puck's Posse Community Membership still out there. Sign up and join today. You can link on the QR code if you are streaming. If you are listening right now, just go to pucksports.com on the top of the webpage. We'll take you a link there to the Patreon site for Puck Sports. You want all access to all the content, don't want to miss a thing. Become a full member because members get full access to all VIP content. All right, we go daily puck drop live every single day at 10 a.m. We go for about 90 minutes or so. So if you're listening later to the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple and Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, we do go live every single day at 10 a.m. You can listen to us, by the way. You can download the Puck Sports mobile app from the iOS store, also the Android store. All right, what do we got today on the radio? I always say it. I knew I was going to say it. You know, it's like online radio is really what it is. We'll talk about the Seahawks running game. We'll get into the latest with the winter meetings. It's heating up down there in Dallas. Danny Kelly from The Athletic will stop on by at 10:15. Our weekly conversation with Danny as we talk all things football. Seahawks, NFL, fantasy football brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. And then John Canzano, all things college sports there with John and just whatever else we can come up with at 10:45, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. And, of course, we end every show with Hey, What the Puck, brought to you by Restoration1.com. All right, so that's the rundown here on the show today. You can always you can email the show, Puckett Puck Sports. You can talk directly as I'm doing the show via the YouTube chat. Also, you can chat via Twitter. Let's get into the run game. The Seahawks. God, that run game looked good last week, didn't it? And we talked about it yesterday. I'm just going to bring it up again because we had the little soundbite that we played. You know, oh, why was the run game so much better? Why was the offense so much better? Guys, it's just simple. Just go into watching sports and consuming sports like you're sitting around a sports bar. It's much more fun to do it that way. It's much more fun than, again, I know there's a place for the analytics, and I understand there's a place for the all-22. It's not fun watching and discussing sports that way. It just isn't. Just imagine you're sitting around a barbershop, sitting around a bar, having a beer, talking about the game. And if you were talking at the bar about the game, you would say, well, why did the offense look better? Well, the offense looked better because they ran the ball better or because their offensive line blocked better. That's why it looked better. Now, they're going to get a much tougher test coming up this week against the Packers. Packers, man, they are stout on defense. They give up about 107 yards on the ground. God, the next week after that, the Vikings are even better. They're under 90 yards a game. Their interior line, got Kenny Clark, you got Wyatt, you got the ends and Gary and Van Ness. This is a good defense that the Seahawks are going to be facing coming up this weekend on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, I mean, it's a defense that for the most part on the ground against Detroit in the two games have kind of held them in check, including their last meeting where they only gave up 111 yards on 34 carries. I mean, that was really the story, was Jared Goff making plays. Now, the Bears did get him a few weeks ago for $179, but 70 of that came there from Caleb Williams. Good defense. They forced 24 turnovers so far on the season. So, obviously, a much different task at hand here in the next 2 weeks for this running game and then for this offensive line. So, I can envision us next week bitching and moaning again about the line. Can't you? In the same thing going for the Vikings game. Why? Because the opponent's going to ramp up. Opponent's going to be much different. It's going to be much tougher. I mean, these are two of the teams that are in discussions that could represent, I think, the NFC in the Super Bowl. Jordan Love's dynamic. He's coming in. He is prone to make mistakes in the passing game. He is prone to turn it over, and that's going to be awesome to watch the chess game between Mike Macdonald, Matt LaFleur, and then really Macdonald against Jordan Love. Can he force Jordan Love into some, turnovers? Can he get in his head? Can he confuse Jordan Love? I mean, that's what we've seen here recently here from Mike Macdonald, confusing Kyler Murray, confusing Aaron Rodgers, having success here recently of giving these quarterbacks things that they haven't necessarily seen before or don't expect to see. And we'll see what he can do against Jordan Love coming up this week. In terms of just going back to the running game, can that running game continue this week? Can they get another great performance out of Zach Charbonnet? Will they continue, as they talked yesterday, did Mike Macdonald and others, about the adjustments that they made in their running game? Going to a little bit, different blocking schemes that they all talked about. Using those the guards, LaMea, and then using Abe Lucas in the run game, pulling those guys a lot more. Will we see that again coming up on Sunday? Obviously, the Packers are going to be prepared for it. They know that the little different wrinkle is going to come their way. The biggest question mark is going to be health of old Kenny Walker. Not good news when it came out yesterday. He's going to undergo more tests. More tests on an injured calf. I don't like to hear that. And I don't think anyone should like to hear that. So hopefully Kenny Walker's okay here in the next few days. But again, they're going to have a couple of more. I think 24 in the next 48 hours, they're going to know whether or not he'll be a go this weekend against the Packers. They need Kenny Walker, as great as Charbonnet was, obviously, this past weekend. Ken Walker's the number one back on the team. And I know what the go-to guy brought up yesterday. Well, is there a running back controversy? There's not a running back controversy. There's just not. Charbonnet had a great game. Charbonnet had a great game because that offensive line dominated up front. If Ken Walker was in there, most likely would have had the same results. I know they got a little different running styles, and maybe the way they were blocking it on Sunday benefits Charbonnet a little bit more than it does Walker. Walker is a stud. But Charbonnet, again, doesn't get enough credit what a good back he is. I understand the draft capital and people being upset about that one. That is a good backup running back, and he proved it this past weekend. But will they be able to continue it here the next 2 weeks? Because the challenge at hand against these two defenses, much different when they did against Arizona. Arizona had been better against the run in the past, I think it's, 5, 6, 7 weeks, but a different challenge coming up this week. And for them to get into the playoffs, to make this push, to hold off the Rams, and to win the division, that is the element that's got to be more consistent. If they get that type of production, thanks tips from the Ron Fairly obvious, if they block like that, they'll win the division. Because, again, it's a simple game. It really, really is a simple game. It just comes down to your lines on both sides. It just does. And I know it's not sexy to talk about, and it gets boring to talk about, but God, it's really the case. We've been discussing it for a friggin' decade about why and how they need to improve their offensive line. But they took a great step this past week. One thing that I've been holding my hat on is and they brought it up yesterday. I don't know if they brought it up, but I know Condota wrote about it today. And he's right. Consistency. They've just had consistency here in the last few weeks on that offensive line. It's 4 games, I believe, for Oluwatimi. It's 4 games now for Abe Lucas. This is now 2 games in a row for LaMea. Again, an offensive line just needs consistency. They need to be able to work together. And we'll see how they look here in the next few weeks. If they all stay healthy in the way that they've been playing the last 2 weeks, this could be, at the end of the day, a pretty good offensive line. Hopefully, fingers crossed. How about that? Glass half full outlook. Now let's get the glass half empty. Are the winter meetings warming up for your Mariners? Great reporting going on right now Adam Jude, Ryan Divish, God, we'll give them a reach around. They're in Dallas at the winter meetings. As they, in between their drinking and socializing, they're actually doing some reporting down there. And the very latest coming out of the winter meetings, just going to parrot what those guys have reported, because they got boots on the ground there. Jerry DiPoto met with all those guys yesterday, including Daniel Kramer of MLB.com. Roki Sasaki's name is now heating up. They acknowledged, hey, we're going to be all in on him. We'll make a push, just like all the other teams are. If you're a baseball team and not trying to get this guy, then you're an idiot. Everybody should be trying to get this guy. You're talking about a young pitching phenom that is going to cost you nothing. You're going to be paid minimum wage because he's coming in and not under a major league contract. He's opened up his posting period, which is 45 days, but you're not going to have anything go on. I think was the date is nothing's going to happen before January 15th, so the deadline would be January 23rd. DiPoto talked about, hey, listen, could we go with a 6-man rotation? I mean, sure. I mean, that's what they do in Japan. To me, you go get Roki Sasaki, who is, again, right, one of the best young pitchers in baseball. I mean, there's a guy that's throwing over 100 miles an hour in the Japanese league. You are going to then move one of them. You're not going to keep 6 starters. That opens up the door for Luis Castillo, who I would imagine would be the number one guy that they want to trade, because it's just it benefits them financially. Benefits them financially from getting out of $70+ million if they can move him. And I believe that they don't want to trade the younger guys. So of course they don't want to trade the younger guys. It doesn't make sense to trade them. It really doesn't. I'll backtrack. It makes sense from a capitalizing on prospects that you would get in return for one of those young guys. Most likely you're going to get more back just because they don't make anything and they're younger. But the other part of it is they're young and they don't cost anything. You don't want to get rid of them. Castillo you can stomach because of the 4 other guys that you have. And whatever you want to slot Castillo, right? I'm not saying that he's the 5th starter, but let's say, those other, wherever. You got 4 of the 5 that are studs. They just are all studs. You add Sasaki, there's your 5th one. So then you're moving on there from Castillo. Who are the teams that are rumored to get him? Well, hey, how about this? The Dodgers. Shocker. The Dodgers are rumored to get him. And then the second team are the Padres because of his relationship there with Yu Darvish. The other things they've talked about coming out of the winter meetings, Tristan Casas, the young left-handed first baseman for the Boston Red Sox. Apparently, the Red Sox have asked for Bryce Miller or Brian Wu. That is coming from the Boston.com. I had a story about that, just in terms of who would they want to get, who would be willing to acquire, or or part ways there with Casas. I was talking to Jude and Divish earlier today. Why would the Red Sox want to move on from him? And they both cited, hey, listen, there's some health concerns maybe with him. He's been banged up. Only played in 63 games last year. He had a rib injury, a cartilage issue. I don't know if that's a soft tissue lingering issue with him, but whatever. There may be some thought, according to those guys, maybe a history of breaking things down. But it is odd why you'd want to move on from a 24-year-old left-handed bat, especially there in Boston. I know there's some talk. They mentioned in that Boston.com article, and even Jude and Divish were talking about it to me earlier, that they were thinking about, they speculate they would move Devers from over from third to first base. That frees up them to go get Alex Bregman. Casas under club control. You want to do a deal for Castillo for this guy? Yeah, I'm in. I'm in for this. I'm in for this under club control. He's got power. I mean, I guess if there's a health concern, well, we'll find out and we'll wait and see. But this is a guy that in his first 3 seasons has slugged .473. He's got an OPS plus of over 125. These are the types of moves you've got to do. If you're not going to go out and spend for guys, these are the type of moves that you're going to have to go out and acquire. And you get a young first baseman, left-handed, this ballpark. We've talked about this before. Kruger's been banging this drum. Left-handed bats. He would certainly fit that bill. We'll get into a little bit later. There's a Nolan Arenado rumor. No thanks. Alec Boehm is still out there. We can touch on that a little bit later. And then Jerry Dipoto made a mention of Cole Young and Tyler Locklear that we've got to address at some point. But we got to get to it. He's waiting by. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Danny Kelly from The Ringer. You can follow Danny on X at Danny B. Kelly, also on Blue Sky, senior staff writer at The Ringer, fantasy football show, plus the Ringer NFL Draft Show. His weekly appearance is brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies, Manny and Roger. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years. Makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodhisattva IPA, host of your other favorite beers. And tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Sorry, hold on. Give me 1 second. Hold on. They're dirty. I got to get the blue light glasses on.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah.
I'm only going to do. They get dirty more often.
They do. They're like, they have stickier lenses or something like that. It's
that's the thing. Here we go. Hold on. It's the blue light show. We each wear our blue light glasses.
Yeah.
Because we're staring at computers all day long. and I'll be honest with you, since doing this, wearing them more, the twitch is gone.
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know more eye twitching.
That's great to hear.
How's your eye twitching going, huh?
It's still there a little bit. I would say it's like much less dramatic than it was before. And my eyes just feel less tired all day.
Less tired. How many hours a day, Danny, do you spend in front of a computer, would you say?
10 minimum. It's funny. There's like this joke that's like, yeah, I'm going to go home after looking at my medium screen. I'm going to go home and then watch my big screen while looking at my little screen. It's like just looking at screens all day long.
We can't get out. We can't get away from it, can we?
No. But
and they always say, hey, 1 hour before bed, don't look at a screen time. Really?
Oh, I've been reading at bedtime. I'm doing a good job. Good.
Well, what are
making
we reading,
some changes
Danny?
in my life.
What are we reading?
Reading what's the name of it? I can't remember the name.
Must be a thriller.
It's about a KGB agent who was a spy for the US for a long time during the Cold War.
Look at you.
Author Ben McIntyre, he writes some really good stuff. He wrote Rogue Heroes, which is now a major show that's really good. He wrote Operation Mincemeat, which is a movie on Netflix. A couple other things. He's good. It's good.
All right.
Check him out.
All right, I'm in. All right, Danny. Book suggestions as well. If you in the comments, if you want a book suggestion for Danny and I, please right away and give us a
War and Peace.
Yeah. It's a light read,
Just
Danny.
Bite off a chunk at a time. Yeah,
it's a light read. Hey, it's amazing when you get good offensive line play, your offense looks better.
I know. What a novel concept.
It's weird how that works out, Danny.
I saw some stat this week that was like basically in terms of yards before contact, the Seahawks, both Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet had it was like 29th or 30th in the NFL in yards before contact, and then in this last game it was like first or second. I'm trying to pull up the exact stat here. Here we go. This is from Fantasy Points. Seahawks running backs average yards before contact per attempt from weeks 1 to 13. Ken Walker ranked 53rd out of 57. Zach Charbonnet ranked 56 out of 57. On Sunday, week 14, top 5. Charbonnet 3.36 yards before contact per attempt. Top 5 in the NFL. It would have been top 5 full season. So huge difference. I don't know what they did exactly that was so different. I think they changed up. I saw some people talking about doing more gap stuff, more counter stuff. So that's
they're pulling their linemen more. They were getting their athletic linemen on the move and pulling a little bit more.
Yeah. So that's encouraging. Hopefully they can keep it going. Obviously Zach Charbonnet. I was talking to some friends, and this is not me comparing him as a player to Derrick Henry, but stylistically, I feel like both Derrick Henry and Charbonnet, they need a little bit of a runway. They're not going to break tackles behind the line of scrimmage. They're not going to be the type of guy that's just making somebody miss in a phone booth. But if you give them like a yard or two to get rumbling, like they are very hard to bring down. Very, very good. So obviously Charbonnet's not on the level of Derrick Henry, but I think stylistically similar type runners where if you give them a little bit of runway, they can really get rumbling.
Hold on, I'm just marking this down. 21 minutes. Danny compares Charbonnet to Henry.
This is the life we live.
We'll put this up. We're going to put this up on our little 60-second clip later.
I hate you.
and none of it will include. I'm not saying he's Henry. I'm only going to put the part where you say Charbonnet reminds me of Henry.
This is like the Arrested Development joke that they spliced Job going, "Please don't say I shot that man."
Yeah, right. Exactly. God, great show.
Yeah,
great show. I have a buddy that's watched it 6 times. The whole 6 times has watched it over and over again. Just can't get enough of it. So well, good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know people have what with the scheme that they were doing and polling, it fits the style more of Charbonnet. I don't know. I've seen plenty of runs where Walker, hits the hole hard, doesn't dance. I think that part of the reason Walker's had to dance is because most times when he gets the handoff, there's 3 people in the backfield.
Yards before contact per attempt, 53rd out of 57. He's not getting any room to run. And it's like a miracle he's done as well as he has done this year, I think. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, maybe like in a perfect world, they have both guys running a little bit more, like instead of just leaning purely on Walker, give defenses a kind of a change up and get both those guys, more opportunities to rest, have them fresher. Obviously, Walker's hurt now. It doesn't even sound like he might not come back this week.
I don't like what I heard on Monday, where he's like, we'll know he's going to get some X-rays more on his calf, and we'll know in 24 or 48 hours. Well, I don't like X-rays and all that. I don't like that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound awesome. No. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this is the reason that you go out and draft Charbonnet in the second round. Hopefully, you can get him in, and the run game doesn't suffer. In fact, it obviously looked a lot better in this last game. So that's the reason that you draft a guy like that, is so you can weather the storm of injuries throughout a season.
Yeah, here's the deal with I think just the whole situation. I mean, I just think that I'd love to see them on the field together at times. I think that would be interesting. I think they bring a different element that I think you can expose, I think, both those guys to a defense, at once. I think they're both good out of the backfield. I mean, I think Charbonnet proved that last week. And I think that was the one thing that, from the past game against Arizona, what I'd love to see continue against Green Bay, Minnesota, and the Bears and the Rams, as I name every team that they're playing on the remaining schedule for the season, is that I love the little dump downs, the little Tom Brady football where you dump it down to your back, you get 5-6 yards. It's like the easiest throw in football. Yeah. And I don't know why teams don't do it more.
I mean, I think that was a big part of this last game too. Geno was finding the dump off, not pushing it when he, not pushing it into tight coverage a little too much in that game. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like you can't go broke taking a profit type of deal. Like getting those, and it's tough on a defense too, because like, you get either Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet out in space, and you got to tackle those guys, and they get a little bit of a running head start, and that hurts them. It's like it's kind of an extension of the run game where you want the opposing team, as Pete Carroll used to always say, you want them to feel you, want them to know that you've played them, and so the physicality aspect of it is nice. So. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Like, take what the defense is giving you, get a profit, keep on schedule. This is something that they haven't been able to do all year. I think I mentioned this last week. In terms of third down, they were coming into this week dead last in average yards to go on third down. And while we're talking, I'm going to look up where they are now if they improved in that at all. But obviously, that's an aspect. That's a reflection of how they've been playing on first and second down, just not getting themselves into position to have manageable third down distance. And so, yeah, they're still last. The Houston Texans are second last. I think Seattle and Houston are having some of the same problems, just not being able to function very well on first and second down offensively.
Well, I muted myself. Well, and that's where it comes back to just those little dump downs are just so effective in throwing the ball. I mean, just getting positive yards. It's, I think a lot about Mike Holmgren when he was calling plays. They would throw early on first down just to get an easy, safe completion. I think of the air raid at times. The air raid will throw it to the backside of the backfield because with the way linebackers play, well, you can get 3-4 yards like that, and all of a sudden now you're in 2nd and 6. And God, that's just your whole different playbook is open. I thought Geno Smith played an unbelievable game. I really did. I think he played a fantastic game. Yeah. Just taking what that defense gave him, and it's something that I hope continues here, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, totally agree. Didn't feel like he was pressing, which is nice. Obviously, it helps to get that lead, but they protected it throughout the game. Yeah, man, how we feel about the Seahawks now? 8-5. Been a roller coaster season, hasn't it?
All of it. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's just it's been a unbelievably unpredictable season for him, Danny.
Yeah.
And it's just, one thing that I love about sports, but just love about these guys in particular, is that each week they've just gotten better.
Yeah.
They've just improved each week. They recognized changes that they needed to make. They did that defensively. They said, hey, listen, what we did in the offseason with the linebackers didn't work. It didn't work. We got to change it up. We got to change up our linebackers. They did that. They acquire Ernest Jones. And right now that is going to go down as probably the second biggest trade they've ever pulled off in franchise history in season. Of course, right behind the Marshawn Lynch trade that they made with Buffalo. So, he's going to get paid in the offseason. Hopefully they can retain him.
Yeah.
There in the offseason. But,
he's bounced around. Maybe there's an incentive for him to, like, stick somewhere where he's, like, really appreciated. Hopefully they can keep him. In regards to the defense, I was checking the DVOA rankings this morning. Guess who's now in the top 10 on defense in DVOA? Seahawks, number 9.
All right.
It's been a journey. I tell you, I think early in the season, the defense looked good. And then they were like, oh, maybe that's just because they're playing crappy quarterbacks. Now, 3/4 of the way through the season or wherever we are, like, Bo Nix doesn't look like such a bad quarterback to have faced. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think defensively they kind of fell apart in the middle of the season, but now they are back on. This looks like the defense that we were hoping that Mike McDonald could produce with the talent the Seahawks have. They're getting pressure, they're tackling better, which is so much more entertaining to watch. Witherspoon's flying around doing his thing. It feels like Reek Wolin makes a big play once a game. Julian Love makes a big play.
Oh, Love's been playing great.
Every
Secondary game. Job has been. I
didn't know who this guy was before the season.
Nobody did. Yeah. Nobody did, and he's been playing great. And Leonard Williams. And I just want to know. Someone needs to explain to me. Maybe we get Leonard Williams on. What has changed? How did he all of a sudden? It's not like he was a bad player last year, but I was
clicking.
I was underwhelmed. I'll be honest with you. And then when they paid him, I'm like, okay, really? Like, is he worth it?
Right.
He's been worth it this year. And I just want to know what's changed. I mean, he's playing like Jefferson from Fast Times. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I think Mike McDonald said something about comparing him to Aaron Donald. So that's always a good thing. That means things are going well.
That works.
Yeah, I mean, it is always interesting. I think a lot of times it's there's a lot of moving pieces on a defense, and sometimes like just getting used to like what you're supposed to be doing in any given situation is a big part of it. I think the guys around you is a big part of it. He's been benefiting from the fact that the edge rushers are they're doing really well as well. Like they're making pressure, they're creating pressure from the edges. Like you can't just focus in on Williams on every snap, in other words. And so, I think it's a little bit to do with like who's playing around him, how the team is playing, the scheme, how comfortable he is in the scheme. But yeah, he's playing out of his mind right now. I'm looking at the PFF like lineup for them. He's number 4 interior defensive tackle in the NFL right now, according to their grades. So, that's pretty exciting. And obviously that's what you were hoping for when you re-signed him. I think he was also like a culture/leader type signing, like where they wanted to have a guy who's like, kind of the alpha on the defensive line, keep everybody on the straight and narrow or whatever, provide good leadership. And I think he's always been like that type of guy. So yeah, super exciting.
He's just been awesome. He's been whatever it is, whatever has motivated him this year. I don't know, maybe there's not a motivation. Normally these guys play like this when they're playing for a contract, but he's already been paid.
I know.
I think it's maybe it's just the influence or the scheme that Mike McDonald's put together for him, that it just fits him and fits the things that he does. He is just a beautiful looking athlete. I mean, he is a
tall,
monster of a
physical,
man. Fat. I mean, you go back to the touchdown against the Jets. I mean, how many defensive tackles run like that?
Yeah.
Very few, if any.
6'5", 302 is what he's listed at. Yeah, that's a big guy. That's a big dude.
It's unbelievable. I mean, their defense has just been playing out of their minds. They're going to get a wonderful test coming up Sunday against Green Bay and Jordan Love. And then I wonder, is Cam Ness Can this running game, can this offensive line who's played better the past few weeks, now they get a hold up against the Packers, who the Packers are a much different beast, right? This ain't Arizona. And they're
Right.
going to get really tested here in the next 2 weeks with the Packers and the Vikings, because these are two very good defenses, and two good defenses, especially against the run.
Yeah. Yeah. These are two tough teams, obviously. The Vikings are, they're particularly scary just because they run sort of like a similar style of defense in terms of like, you never know where the blitz is coming from. You never know where the pressure is coming from. It's like really hard on a quarterback. In the Packers, they're like surprisingly good on defense this year as well.
Yeah.
Because they have like they have a defense like full of first rounders that just kind of haven't been able to click for whatever reason. It's like what we're talking about with Leonard Williams. They have all this talent on defense, but the sum is not greater than the parts. The sum is less than the parts for some reason, whatever it is. But they got, a new defensive coordinator this year. And I think he's been kind of like figuring it out. So yeah, these are going to be two really tough tests. I'm glad they're at home. But like we talked about, their home field advantage isn't what it used to be, but at least that's at home. They don't have to travel.
Well, this will be the game where you're going to, I mean, honestly, there's just going to be a lot of Packer fans there.
Yep.
There just is. I mean, and before we get into the bitching and moaning about it and how the Packer fan base is going to take the place over, just understand, even if this were 2013, I was there for the championship game. There was a ton of Packer fans for the championship game.
Yeah.
A ton.
There was tons of 49ers fans in the championship games for those as well. Yeah.
It's just their fan bases. That's a heritage fan base. It's going to travel. And I'm going to tell you, the next week it's going to be the same thing with Minnesota. Probably not as much for the Packers. I've talked about this a lot. There's just a lot of people from Minnesota that have moved out here.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's just it's like Minnesota of the West.
I mean, I went to PLU. Which is like, what the history of the school is like. There's like a Lutheran connection, a lot of Nordic connection, and it's like a ton of people from Minnesota go to PLU for whatever reason.
My wife went there. But she's from Denver, but her whole family's from Minnesota. Minnesota, the Midwest.
It's just like a Minnesota connection. It's like they have like this thing. So yeah, I definitely understand that and can see that happening.
And why, as Seattleites, we haven't adopted the cheese curds more or the hot dish, I don't understand, because they're two of the two of the best cuisines in the history of American food.
Cheese curds.
They really are. Well, I know that's more of a Wisconsin thing.
I tried beer cheese one time.
Wonderful.
I'm trying to remember what it was like. I feel like it was exhilarating.
Good. It's beer and cheese, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, what can go wrong?
Add some bread in there.
Hard to screw that up.
And my God, we've got a full course meal. But hot dish really is one of my favorite things of all time.
What's hot dish? I don't even know.
Hot dish is just like everything thrown together in a pan. You throw it in the oven. So it's like ground beef, cream of mushroom soup, like green beans, cheese, those little fried onions, tater tots on top.
Sounds decadent. Yeah.
It's just it's comfort food.
Yeah.
But it really is American, just fine dining.
So Midwest. Yeah.
Oh, very, very Midwest. Very Midwest.
Love that
for sure. So I mean, they will face a stiff challenge with the Packers. That was a smooth transition from hot dish right back to the Packers. I ain't really gonna I'm gonna praise myself for that.
Well done, sir.
Yeah, it was. But there's gonna be just a lot of people there. So before everyone bitches about it, you're not gonna bitch about it if they win. That's the thing.
Right.
If they win, no one's gonna talk about it on Monday. They're only going to talk about it if somehow they lose. And the thing is, like, the Bills game got a lot of attention because they were getting their teeth. Well, the second half they were getting their teeth kicked in, and then people in the third quarter just left. Said, I don't want to watch this anymore. And so what happened is, like, no Seahawks fans are there, and then it's all Bills fans.
Yeah.
And then it sounded like a Bills home game. So don't let them kick your ass in your home field, and you'll be okay.
I like it. Yeah.
That's all you got to do.
Just win.
God, thanks, Al. You got to just win.
Win, baby.
I'm intrigued what McDonald's going to do, because it seems like in the last few weeks, did it with Murray, did it with Rodgers, right? Two very good quarterbacks, one a veteran, one a young guy still. Is that he seemed to have, at times in critical situations, really confused both those guys. We talked about the Leonard Williams interception, clearly confused Rodgers on that one, and then Murray a few times had confused him on some picks in that game, just confused him in general.
The Ernest Jones pick, I think in particular, you never saw him.
Yeah. Well, Jordan Love likes to turn it over. Got 11
He's not.
picks on the season.
Yeah, we joke around on our show, the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. By the way, we joke around on our show.
Where can I find that show? By the way,
on Spotify or anywhere you get your podcast.
but really Spotify.
But Spotify, ideally, since our company is actually owned by Spotify.
Yes,
so technically a Spotify employee. So love Spotify.
Love Spotify.
But yeah, we joke around this about this on our show. Like basically, Jordan Love has two devils on his shoulders: Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre.
Yeah,
and Brett Favre. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is more. I don't even know if Jordan Love like actually intersected with Favre at any point in time. But like obviously, growing up, we all watch Favre and
plays like him.
He's got a little Favre in him in the sense that he like will throw the ball into coverage and not he like trusts his guys and he'll make a head shaking type of decision. Like we saw that in college too. Like it's not just in the pros. And so, but then obviously like he looks like Rodgers, the way he like moves sometimes, the way he like throws off his back foot. There's obvious connection there in terms of like just playing behind him for a couple of years that you can kind of see the Rodgers influence. So two devils on his shoulder, Rodgers and Favre. Can you imagine that combo of people just in your ear at all times? So yeah, Jordan Love, he's a really good player, but he is prone to making an interception. I think before Kirk Cousins went on his streak of horrificness, I believe Jordan Love led the NFL in picks. It's up there. He's up there with Geno. I know that. And so yeah, I mean he can turn the ball over. That's going to be a huge factor in this game. Hopefully he can create a couple turnovers, run the ball like they were running it on last Sunday, and then go from there. I think they have a chance to win. Obviously, I think the Packers are probably a better team overall. DVOA would say that for sure, but yeah. So let's see. Jordan Love, 21 touchdowns to 11 picks. Yeah.
Let me jump in because I know there's going to be people. I mean, I understand. I've read it and I understand it. There are going to be a lot of people that DVOA because we it's thrown around. Give them a quick cliff notes of what it is, just because I know there's somebody listening or watching this right now, maybe in the chat. It's like I don't know what that is, but I'm going to go with it.
It's like a team. It's a team-wide metric that uses every play from every football game going back into essentially the 80s. I think they're still adding to their database, because they have to go back. There's certain stats they didn't have back then, and they literally have to go back and like chart games. So every once in a while you'll see FTN. It used to be Football Outsiders like asking people, do you have any VHS tapes of the Bengals playing the Giants in 1982 or whatever? Like that's the kind of like input they put into this. So basically it's a team-wide metric, and there's a lot to it, but it's basically it compares it's like an EPA type of thing, so expected points. So for every specific play from where they started, it
takes in like the factors of the opponent, what their stats are going into the game, their passing yard,
like how well they did on first, second, and third down, the efficiency. The Seahawks during the 2012 to 2015 era were number one in DVOA for like 4 straight years. You never see that. Their defense was like number one in defensive.
It's like not every opponent is created equal,
right? So basically, it tries to add context to how efficient you are compared to the rest of the league, compared to the rest of NFL history, essentially. And some teams like I don't know if there's any this year, but like some teams will compare favorably to like the greatest teams of all time. The 85 Bears had X DVOA. So I think it's just like a way of providing some context of how good a team is rather than just like their win-loss record, because there's so many variables in football. I don't think it's like gospel, but it's definitely a useful tool to tell you kind of how strong a team is, I think, and how efficient they are.
Next time, if you next time you're sitting at your local watering hole, your dive bar, I want you to turn over to Shane over there, who's been thrown down about 19 Coors Lights and has had a couple of Jamesons, and go, hey, Shane, how about that fucking Packers DVOA, huh? Just see what Shane says to you. The fuck is a DVOA? They just look pretty good to me. No, it's just a further evidence and proof just how a team operates week in and week out. What's their ceiling, you think?
The Seahawks?
This year.
That's a great question.
I mean, division, can they win a game in the playoffs?
Yes, I think so. If the defense continues to play like this, yes. I think this is silly and cliche, but like if the run game continues to do what they did in this last game,
it's not cliche. See, stop it. It's the truth.
It's the truth.
It just is the truth.
Being one-dimensional is hard. in the
Yeah.
NFL. That's the bottom line. It's hard to be one-dimensional. Coaches are too good. Defenses are too good. They know what's coming, and there's only so many plays you can run. And so being one-dimensional it makes it really hard. And obviously, like if you get a lead, being able to run drains the clock. It keeps the ball out of the other team's hands. Like there's certain schematic or strategic advantages to being able to run, obviously. And statistically, you're more likely to protect the football when you don't have to throw 40, 50 times a game. So there's all these variables. But basically it comes down to like being harder to defend because you're not one dimensional. So like if the run game can continue to run like they did, not even like, we don't even need to be like the best in the NFL like they were last week, just average, like that will be massive. And to me, like the defense, the way it's trending, you have a good to potentially very good offense and a top 10 defense, like that team can win in the playoffs. Like I think, and Geno Smith, like how good he is late in games, how good he's been late in games, game-winning drives, pushing the ball, moving the ball down the field in key situations. I think that especially in a year like this, where there's only like a handful of really good teams, I think they have a good of shot. They have as good of a shot as anybody outside of like the Eagles, Lions, Chiefs, Ravens. Those teams I think look like a cut above everyone else. But I don't know. The rest of the teams there are just kind of like, there's kind of some good teams, not great teams, I think. And the Seahawks are in that group.
Are we happy for Russell Wilson?
I am.
Okay.
I teased him a lot, like he was always kind of like a goober in a lot of ways, but he was our goober for a really long time. We loved him. I think it's cool to see him having like a career renaissance. Obviously, I think the Steelers, the way they're constructed now, it's like similar to what the Seahawks were in their heyday. Defense, run the ball control, hit some explosives. Russell's numbers, I was comparing his numbers this year the other day to basically his top seasons in Seattle in terms of like 2012 to 2017. I put it in, and man, his numbers this year are really pretty much right in line, if not better than everything he was doing in that like peak era, other than he was running a lot more back then. Sack rate is about the same, which is, that's kind of like the one bugaboo I'd say for him is like he takes too many sacks, holds onto the ball a little too long. But man, he is pushing the ball down the field. He's opened up that passing game. Fields is a good runner, but he was just not very accurate, not very aggressive, pushing the ball down the field. Russell Wilson will drop it in a bucket for his guys. Yeah. And he's also making some plays out of structure still. He's still got a little bit of magic to him. Yeah. So I made this argument, I think last year, or maybe it was the year before, when he was like flaming out a little bit in Denver, that he's actually not that different than he was in his prime. If you go back to the days of the prime Seahawks, the Legion of Boom era, we were having this discussion every week. Like, God, this offense is hard to watch. God, that's frustrating. Why can't we just get a big lead? Why is this every game comes down to 13-11 or whatever? You know what I mean?
And then he pulls it out.
And then he pulls out the magic at the end of the game. This is the same thing he was doing. The only difference, a big difference, is he's not as escapable as he used to be, and he's not as much of a runner as he was. But he's still got the accuracy down the field. He can still push the ball down the sideline. He's still got the leadership intangibles. I think teams especially if you look at the Steelers, they rallied around him, right, big time. And so I don't know. I think it's fun to watch. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. They get in the postseason, they make a run, and then he goes back there. And one thing is going to be team success, but then I think, down the road for him is going to be, is this third act for him going to be the final act that eventually, 20 or whatever it is, 15, 20 years down the road is going to, push him into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Penix time, you think, real quick, before we get to our fantasy football hour, our waiver questions here. Is it Penix time?
It doesn't sound like it is. I think it probably should be. Okay. It sounds like they're committed to Kirk Cousins right now. I think the coach came out yesterday and said that he's our guy, he's our leader. I don't know, man. You tell me. 0 touchdowns and 8 interceptions in the last 4 games.
You drafted the guy for a reason,
right?
And at some point, you're going to have to pull the plug on Cousins. I mean,
things can change quickly in the NFL, even though coaches say things and then the next week they change their mind. So, I would love to see Penix play. Obviously, I don't think Kirk Cousins is the reason you play him is so he's taking care of the football, being a good leader, not losing them games, and that's exactly what he's been doing. Over a rookie, why else would you play him? Yeah. 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I can't
not good.
I can't say it enough times. That is atrocious. atrocious. And some of those picks like were literally the reasons they lost the game.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
100%.
yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm very excited to see what Penix can do in this offense. Especially like honestly, look at the rest of these rookies this year. Like
Right.
Caleb Williams, I think he's definitely flashed some moments. I think he's going to be good in the NFL. Drake May, same deal. Jane Daniels looks like a star. Bo Nix, long-term starter, especially with as long as Sean Payton's still around. I think they're like a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what JJ McCarthy can do last year. If Penix comes in and is good too, we got 6 new good starters from this last draft. Like that is
Incredible
insane.
class. Yeah.
That would be amazing for the NFL as a product and fantasy football in particular, which I care about a lot.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of fantasy football, I mean, we're in the playoffs now. What do we got here? Can you pick anybody up, or what's the? As we're winding down the season, what advice do you have for folks?
I mean, I think the big one this week, there's a couple big running backs to pick up. The big one is Patrick Taylor for the 49ers. He's kind of a contingency pickup because we don't know exactly what's going on with Isaac Guerrero. He says he's good, and it was just precautionary, but he's not practicing yet. He won't be practicing until I believe Wednesday. Wait, yeah, that's tomorrow. And I don't know. I don't trust the 49ers when it comes to injury prognosis. Like what they and players lie all the time. So we'll go pick up Patrick Taylor if you haven't already.
All right.
Because that's important. Sean Tucker for the Buccaneers. Bucky Irving is nicked up. It sounds like they might sit him for another game just to kind of get him healthy for the stretch run. Sincere McCormick for the Raiders, one of the all-time name guys in the NFL. Sincere McCormick. He's looked really good to me. Some juice. I think they're really buying into him as the team's lead back going down the stretch. And they play the Falcons, Jags, and Saints to finish out the season. So like some pretty good matchups there for them. And then at receiver, I'm sticking with like Adam Thielen from the Panthers. He's looked really good the last 2 weeks with Bryce Young kind of in resurgence. Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman for the Browns. I mean, again, Jameis Winston, just in terms of fantasy, he's a kingmaker. Just his willingness to push the ball down the field. And then, Quentin Johnson for the Chargers, Josh Palmer for the Chargers. If Lad McConkey, my boy Lad, if he doesn't end up playing this week, those two guys are in a good offense with Justin Herbert. That's kind of what you're looking for in fantasy. And then Hunter Henry for the Patriots is the tight end I'd probably go grab at this point. Okay,
last but not least, before we wrap it up, let's hear it. Last week, we got to put somebody on the barge. Somebody's got to go on the barge, Danny. Who got to go on the barge? Last week we put Azir Shahir on the barge.
Oh, right.
Do you have anybody in mind? I've got one person in mind.
I mean, Cousins? Are we putting Cousins on the barge?
All right, you want to put Cousins on the barge? Okay, Danny is going to put Cousins on the. That's okay.
For our boy Penix, I want to see Penix playing, man.
All right, there goes Cousins. He's on the barge.
There we go.
All right, I'm going to put AJ Brown on the barge. I'm going to get to Brown later. Yeah.
So having some issues with his quarterback.
You're fucking winning, dude. You're winning. You're 11-2, man.
This is how receivers are, man.
Shut up.
Divas.
God. Can you? I just nothing irritates me more than that.
Yeah,
it just does. I get it. They're receivers and they're like that. I understand, but oh my God, shut up.
They're like one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now.
They're just killing. They're just winning. Yeah. I mean, this guy would rather like have stats and lose? So, yeah, we're gonna put we're going to put Brown on the barge. You've got Cousins on it because you want to see Penix. So
yeah,
I love it. All right, follow Danny on Twitter and Blue Sky at Danny B. Kelly, of course, senior staff writer at The Ringer. Check out the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. Also coming up soon, the Ringer NFL Draft Show. We're going to have to probably transition here a few weeks and talk a little draft as we're
talking draft today, in fact.
Okay, so and what time are you doing that?
We're not doing it live today, so it'll be up tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning.
On Spotify, YouTube, and all those channels?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Danny's weekly appearance all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. Go visit georgetownbeer.com. Thanks, Danny. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, sir.
All right, there he is, Danny Kelly. Again, if you came into that late, check out the full show up on YouTube. Please subscribe there. Also, you can check out the audio versions on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, always up at pucksports.com. I can take the blue light glasses off because that's what we do. Danny and I have to wear the blue light glasses. I don't wear the blue light glasses for our next guest to talk college football because I want to see with my beautiful blue eyes this handsome individual, John Canzano. From johncanzano.com. It's all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizza and local craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Follow John on X and Blue Sky. On X, John Canzano BFT. On Blue Sky, just John Canzano. All of his work up at johncanzano.com. Radio show. He's a media star. The bald-faced truth. Portland, Oregon, 7:50 the game. He carves out time for us. It's amazing.
I love it. I look forward to this every week, man. Good time.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do. Okay,
just making sure.
And by the way,
because I always anticipate the week where you're gonna say to me, finally, you know what, man?
Can't do it.
Just can't do it anymore.
I'm too big.
I'm too big of a star. Me and Wilner are going off to Spotify. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm waiting for the text.
I just like we have a conversation. Like you and I, we have a conversation about sports, and I like that. I go on a lot of other shows around the country, and it's this Q&A style thing, and we just have a conversation, man. And I appreciate that. We're friends.
Yeah. All right. Let's go right into Oregon.
Okay.
I'm not one to defend the Ducks. I don't hate the Ducks. I mean, I do want all the defectors to lose.
Okay, you're winding up for a big one here.
But I'm warming. But I do love Dillingham, so but I still want ASU to lose. But I'm gonna defend them for a second.
Okay.
That is just, I'm glad there's 12 teams. That is such a hose job. What happened to them?
Yeah.
It's just a hose job. How do you face those opponents that they're going to face, the winner between Ohio State and Tennessee, yet the team you just beat in Penn State, and I don't know, maybe SMU goes in there and beats them, but you beat SMU, and then you got to go face Boise? Like, I just I don't understand the thinking behind the committee with that one.
Yeah, that other half of the bracket with Georgia and Penn State has got an easier path to the title game, and without question. I kind of wonder if Georgia were the 1 seed, or if Ohio State were the 1 seed, if the committee would have done the same thing with some of these seedings and these teams, would they have looked at the bracket, or is this just a byproduct of the first year and there's tweaks that need to be made? Because the biggest problem in this bracket comes because Ohio State in particular is not a conference champion, right? Ohio State is the 6th ranked team, according to the committee. Okay. They're number 6, but they get leapfrogged by Boise State. They get leapfrogged by Arizona State because they're conference champions in the seeding. And so Ohio State is suddenly underseeded as an 8. And so they're sitting there in that 8-9 game, even though they're the number 6 seed. And, some of this in play for Notre Dame as well, because Notre Dame is not eligible to be a conference champion. And so they didn't really think through the seeding versus the ranking problems that it would create, because now you have the 1 seed playing the 6th best team, and it shouldn't be that way. You should have some advantage because you were the 1 seed, like the NFL, whether that's a home game in the quarterfinal instead of going to the Rose Bowl, or whether that's an easier path. There just should be some advantage for you being the 1 seed. I think they'll work it out in future brackets. This is I expect they will make. I'm all in favor of the conference champions getting first round buys and rewarding them. But you definitely are looking at Oregon in this case, and you're going, they have the hardest path of any of the top seeds.
Well, think about how they should, because my gripe with it is kind of the same gripe that everyone has. One, as a viewer and a fan of the sport, the whole seeding and ranking thing is too confusing.
Yeah.
They need to get rid of it, because when they unveil it, and it started, week 1 with it, because I'm like, I understand, but it's hard to follow, because you're like, well, they're the 9th seed or the 10th seed, but they're going to be ranking, but they're going to be seeded 4th, and you're like, I just know the casual viewer of college football fan watches that and goes, I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. It's why every week they had to come out. Heather Dinich and all these had to come out and explain it to everyone.
Yeah.
They need to get away from it and just seed it. 1 through 12.
They asked for help from the media. They sent out an email and they talked to media and they say, hey, we need your help in explaining this. That's a red flag.
Yeah,
if you need
100%.
to have media members explaining your playoff process, it's a red flag. What they probably should have done is they should have said, hey, look, the top 4 conference champions, they're getting in, they get a bye. And then everyone else after that gets seeded, just like, they do a little bit with the NCAA, or do what the NCAA tournament does in basketball and go, hey, look, you win your conference championship, you're in. Then you turn to the committee and go, seed all of these teams.
Right.
And seed them 1 to 12, because that would have resulted in Ohio State at 6. Oregon would have been you get a bye, and then you're not playing the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. Certainly, if you're the Ducks, I think Dan Lanning handled it well. He's like, we got to be the best. You got to beat the best, and not going to make an excuse, not going to create a problem with it. But definitely an issue where, you're going to get a 24-day rest. There could be some rust involved. And then you're getting the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. And that is not an easier path than the other conference champions.
Well, and then you look at it right now. If they were to do it just based on seeding, so you got Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State are the top 4. They would have byes. I mean, think of this first round matchup that you would have, right? Notre Dame's the 5th seed. They would face Arizona State, the 5-12 matchup.
I love that.
The 6-11 would be Ohio State and Alabama.
Yeah.
The 7-10 would be Tennessee and SMU, 8-9 Indiana and Boise State.
Yeah.
I just, and they can make changes, right? They're not married to this. Correct?
Oh, they're going to make changes. And the Big Ten and the SEC contend that they have the ability to make the changes to the format, that they ultimately are the gatekeepers on the format. We'll see how that works out, but they've got an awful lot of clout in the room. SEC is not happy that Alabama didn't get in, but you lose 3 games in your conference, 25% of your games in your season. Nobody wants to see you play anymore. You're not a contender. So they're out. It's nice to see some new faces, SMU, Boise State, Arizona State in this bracket and contending. That's going to be fun. I had one university president tell me that they're rooting for everybody but the Big Ten and the SEC because an outlier getting to the title game would mean something to the rest of college football, to the ACC and the Big 12, and certainly the Pac-12 and Mountain West and American. So I think there's a lot of interest and intrigue. Ashton Genty's going to be a handful for whoever draws Boise State. But when the bracket came out, I looked at Georgia and I went, nobody's smiling bigger than Georgia because they don't have to beat what Oregon has to beat to get to the title game.
Right. Yeah, if you look at them, and especially what they get, in the Sugar Bowl, right? They go to the Sugar Bowl. They don't got to travel far. Again, you're going to Louisiana. You're going to New Orleans to face Notre Dame or Indiana, and then you win, and then look at who you have. Penn State, SMU, Boise State there, and going to the Orange Bowl. You brought up Georgia. I want to go there. I want to play. Where's that Kirby Smart sound? Kirby Smart. I love him to death. My neighbor went to school with him, so she knows him. Her brother was good friends with him. She tells me great stories about Kirby Smart. I'd love to have a beer with Kirby Smart. But what is he talking about? This was the post game of the SEC championship game.
Round bye. What does that mean to you?
I didn't hear you.
You get the first round bye. What does that mean for you?
Well, it means rest for a team that Greg Sankey and his staff sit on the road all year long. We get to take a little bit of break and get ready for college football.
Look at Sankey right there.
Some rest mentally. Need a little time.
And for people to know, Greg Sankey's the old guy there. So he was bitching and moaning about the schedule. 8 of their 13 games were in the state of Georgia. What is he talking about? Is he just talking about because he made him go to Austin and made him go to Tuscaloosa? Is that what he's talking about?
That's exactly what he's talking about. They had to go on the road to play those tough games. And all coaches are doing this. It's us against the world, and chip on my shoulder. They're always looking for something for the bulletin board and for their teams. But to call Greg Sankey and the SEC out with Greg Sankey standing 5 feet away, you're talking about the guy while the guy is standing over there. That was a little awkward. Now Sankey's going to send him to Fairbanks, Alaska to play Vanderbilt next year if he has his way. But look, Georgia is. They've got the guys. They've got defensive linemen. They've got questions at quarterback. Certainly, I think we're gonna find out pretty early if that rest is benefiting Georgia. But I know Oregon that Dan Lanning lost his first game 49-3 against Georgia in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Dan Lanning and Oregon would love to see Georgia in the national championship game and get another shot at them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Here's just the travel. I just did this because I was just curious to hear someone bitch about traveling. So when they played Florida, that game's in Jacksonville. The flight's an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They played at Kentucky. That flight's an hour and 3 minutes. Alabama, it's a 55-minute flight. Austin, 2.5 hours. Oxford, an hour and 25 minutes. I mean, Jesus,
get out of here.
These guys, and they're complaining, especially in the SEC. Well, we'll see if the changes. If Beck's out, and they've got to go with that young quarterback. Maybe that opens it up from some other teams. Give me Oregon's chances. What do you make of it?
I'm still picking Oregon. I think they're the best team. I think they're the most complete team. They've not tripped this season. Their path is brutal because if all the top seeds wins, they're going to have to beat Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and then they're going to have to beat Texas to get to the title game, and then they're going to have to beat Georgia to win it all. So those are the 3 outs that they have to get in order to win it. You look at, conversely, a team like Georgia. They're gonna sit around, and they're not going to get. They're going to have to get through Boise State to get to the title game. And so it's an easier path, but I like Oregon because they are the most complete team. They've got the coaching, they've got the weapons, they've got the quarterback. I think Dylan Gabriel is the best quarterback in the tournament. And there's something else going on. Like, I was in the aftermath of the Big Ten championship game. I was down on the field where Oregon was celebrating, and Phil Knight is down there. And I wrote about this. People want to read it, but Phil Knight is down there on the field, and there was a lot of emotion. And Dan Lanning's eyes were glassy. And there's a real feeling that this is Oregon's shot, because the SEC is going to push to tweak the format. This is Oregon's shot. They're positioned now to win it. Who knows who they'll have at quarterback in a year or two? They think they're going to be good. But Phil Knight's 86. They've got to go get this for Phil. And so there's just a little extra there for Oregon. And when I look at some of the other teams, I just got a good look at Penn State. We all saw Texas. Texas hasn't beat anybody. Their best win's not a win. And so you look at the teams in this field, and to me, it comes down to Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and as much as I want to see Arizona State and Boise State knock somebody out, I'm not counting them out. They may knock somebody out in those quarterfinal rounds, but I think it's Oregon's year.
It'd be something if you see Oregon and Arizona State in the semifinals.
Oh,
it would make me. I mean, I want to see. Oh God, I want to see ASU and Boise State. That's what I want to see. That'd be perfect for me.
But the cool thing is, we don't know what's going to happen, and there's a lot of discussion like we're having today. And I was telling people, like, pump the brakes on all these widespread format changes until we see this thing play out.
Okay.
Does it turn out that having the 24 days of rest is a huge advantage for those conference champions that were in the top 4? If it is, now we suddenly can go, oh, you did get something for winning your conference championship. Or do they show up rusty? And then we go, hey, that's not an advantage. So we need to see this thing play out. And I don't think that the time off helps anybody more than Boise State. Ashton Genty, he rushes for over 200 yards in the Mountain West championship game. He's got something wrong with that arm. We've known it for weeks. He's going to get 24 days to rest. And I think that's a big benefit for Boise State. When you have a player like that, the guy who should be at the top of everybody's Heisman ballot, playing the way that Genty has played, you've got a shot in these games. He got a $192 on Oregon. He's the reason they were in that game. And Boise left Autzen Stadium that night feeling like they should have beat Oregon. Mm-hmm. So let's not count anybody out, and let's not change the format yet, but it's good to talk about this stuff.
Here's just, besides the seeding and going with the rankings 1 through 12, what I'd like to see change. And I know this is never going to happen because there's too much money involved and the heritage of the bowl games. The other thing I don't like is I don't like these teams that get to play in the first round, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame. They get home games.
Yeah.
But yet Oregon and Arizona State and Boise, Georgia, they don't get a home game.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to see the quarterfinals change. You want go on the road for the semifinals and then go on the road for the championship game. Or just save it for the championship game. If you want to model this after the NFL doesn't do this. Why are we doing this? Yeah,
it's a little silly because the 6 seed, 7 seed, 8 seed, and 9 seed get an advantage for being in those positions. And they get a home game, and Oregon gets extra time off, arguable if that is an advantage or not, and then has to go to a neutral site to play Ohio State. And so, probably Ohio State. So yeah, move the quarterfinal round to the the higher seed gets to host, make the semis the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, and then the national championship game somewhere else.
Sure, and then think about this one. I mean, ASU. Let's say Clemson knocks off Texas, then all of a sudden Arizona State, the higher seed, against the last team he gets in, is at a massive disadvantage because they're playing the Peach Bowl in Georgia. It's going to be 90% Clemson fans.
Yeah, there's just some wonky things going on there. I think it was caused by the fact that they interlocked the concept of seeding and ranking.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have. Like, ranking is one thing, seeding is another. And so if you're saying, hey, the conference champions are getting in and then we're going to seed, that I'm okay with that. But, you got some teams, Notre Dame and Ohio State are the two that jump out at me. They are underseeded in their positions. And because of, what they got leapfrogged by Arizona State and Boise State.
The your partner on the podcast, John Wilner's been on this and touched on it again, and it's a great point because I kept thinking about it too when he would. It makes sense, like this SMU discussion, because it was SMU and Alabama. But why was BYU just thrown away? They had a better resume and they beat them, and they have the same record. What happened to BYU? Why were they so far down the rankings compared to SMU?
Well, I think the committee watched the BYU SMU game, and that was like an 18-15 game. And SMU really did find its quarterback in that game. And I think the committee saw the second half of that game and went, gosh, if that quarterback had started all season, that's the guy. They don't lose a game. SMU's only loss is a narrow loss to BYU earlier in the season. And that it just, frankly, I think it came down to that. And BYU almost got beat by Utah. I think the committee was watching that. Then they lose the subsequent week. And so SMU played for the conference championship and got into the title game and got into their title game, and SMU did not. So, BYU did not. So it came down to that, I think.
Had SMU, because they were getting blown out by Clemson.
Yeah.
If SMU doesn't come back, is Alabama in?
100%. 100%. I think the second half, we don't talk about moral victories, right? Except there was a pretty distinct moral victory that was claimed there by SMU, and playing a really good second half and closing that game up and having it be the way it was. And the committee from the beginning said, in the very first rankings came out, Ward Manuel, the Michigan AD, comes out and says, he's asked, what are you going to do with the conference championship games? Will teams that play in these games be penalized? And, they got on record saying that, no, they weren't looking to penalize a team that was playing for the conference championship. And so they had to, I think, vote that way. And I don't think it was a big surprise that Alabama got nudged out. I was a little bit puzzled by the reaction and how much contention there was, because I just think SMU had the better resume, had played for the conference championship, and the committee had boxed itself into a corner and saying, hey, we're not going to downgrade you for your performance in these games. But I think SMU made a mistake, right? Rhett Lashley, the coach at SMU, great year. He's been great all year. I think he made a mistake in the run up to that ACC title game. He was talking all week about the fact that, we don't have to play in this game. We could just opt out of this game. I think his players heard it. The first half of that game, it looked to me like SMU's players were going, yeah, we don't have to play this game. I think it was a real misfire.
Yeah. Well, okay, just under that line of thinking then, had they got blown out, then they still should have been in.
Yeah, but the committee wouldn't have seen it that way. The committee would have everybody watched them get just pile driven by Clemson, and they wouldn't have put him in over Alabama. It would have been really hard.
But doesn't that
to do that.
Therein lies the issue, though.
But
if they've gone record of saying you're not going to get punished for it, then they would have just punished him for it.
Yeah, 100%. But some of it, didn't it feel like they were making it up as they went?
Yeah.
Like week 5 of this, week 6 of this, I was like, they're just making this up, and I think it's an impossible position to be in, because there's no precedent. And here's 12 teams. Here's a confusing format. There's 5. There used to be 5 Power 5 conferences. Now there's Power 4. Yeah. You've got the G5 team that is playing over its head and is, almost beat Oregon. You had a lot of complicating factors. I think they mostly got the field right. I think that, you can quibble with the seeds and the format, but I think they got the right 12 teams playing in this thing.
Real quick, what coach do you trust the most in this?
Kirby Smart. He's good. He's been there. I think I trust him a lot. I do not trust James Franklin. I do not trust Ryan Day. I think Sark at Texas is proven in these big games. He just gets outfoxed. Dan Lanning is got a little bit of a blend because he's been there with both Alabama and Georgia. He's seen what the path in a 4-team playoff or a 2-team playoff looks like, but nobody's seen a 12-team playoff before. Some of this is new. I even trust Kenny Dillingham a little bit because I think Kenny knows that he doesn't know what he doesn't know. You know what I mean? Like Kenny's just there to have a good time. He's going to get his team fired up. They're going to play their best. He's done that. Like Arizona State has got a puncher's chance against anybody in this bracket. I don't believe they can win the necessary games to get to the title game and win it all. But I think they could knock somebody out. I think they could upset somebody.
Yeah. I mean, with that running attack, with the way they can run the ball, the way that Levitt's playing, I think the way he calls the game offensively, to me, because no one thought they'd be there. They were predicted to finish last year. I think Dillingham is going to be a real intriguing coach in this thing, and then just a real intriguing team there for Arizona State. Let's get what are we hearing? What's the latest rumors with Washington State quarterback John Mateer? What do we know?
Well, I know what probably a lot of Washington State fans know, and that Washington State really does want him back, and they're winding up to make a big offer to him. And I believe that meeting with Mateer is supposed to happen today. I talked to a couple of the key donors late last week on Friday. And, I find it really interesting because at a lot of schools, the donors are just saying, here's the financial offer, be with us. But one donor in particular at Washington State told me, hey, I consider the kid a friend. And if he leaves and he goes somewhere else and it's a better situation for him, I'm going to have mixed feelings. But, I think Washington State's going to make its most competitive offer. I know that when they did this with Cam Ward a couple of cycles ago, they came up, all the donors were asked to put in $5,000 into the NIL pod. And then, they gave Cam Ward this $90,000 package. The issue now is that you're looking at like a 7-figure offer in order to have it be a competitive thing. And so on one hand, I do think there's going to be a strong market for John Mateer. On the other, I looked into the portal, Puck, and there's 140 quarterbacks between last spring and now who have been in the portal. And so there's just an ample number of players that are in there. I've got some confidence that if Mateer leaves, that Washington State will find an answer. But I think they're going to wind up and they're going to make their best pitch to him. And I think some of it's going to be, hey, we know who you are. Why not do one more, run it back one more year, and then see how you feel in a year? There'll always be the opportunity, given his age and his eligibility, for him to leave for somewhere else. It's not a bad pitch if you're Washington State.
And I think as this continues to go, and as long as it's been drawn out, I mean, remember, you go back to when Ward made his decision. I think Ward made it few days after the Apple Cup. He was gone, and it was pretty public knowledge or private knowledge behind the scenes that he was going to do it. Something they had, I think Dickert acknowledged that they had talked about leading up to the final game in the Apple Cup, and then he was gone. And so he said it was no surprise that he was gone. I think the fact that he's there, he's practicing this week with the team, I guess is a good sign. I've heard that the decision is going to be made at the end of this week. We'll see. I'm sure he's wrestling with it. And it just probably comes down to this. What do you value? Because he's going to get paid by Washington State, whatever that amount is, but how much more money do you get paid at another program? And
is now the time for him to transfer, given kind of the way that, or is it better for him to play one more year at Washington State and then, explore the portal in a more serious way? But I don't think you're wrong, Puck, for looking for evidence that, he's engaged. He told me, I said, what matters to you this second recruitment that is going to happen? And he said the fact that, he had never been away from home. He's a Texas kid, grew up in the same house. He lived in one house as a kid. He said that people in Pullman welcomed him with open arms, made him feel at home, took care of him. And he said that mattered to him. We'll find out how much, and how can they get the financial number close enough to what those other numbers are to keep John Mateer in the fold. I think his coordinator leaving doesn't help. But the fact that he's still in practice, I absolutely would put that in the corner of, hey, that's a good sign.
And they need a win, right? The way they stumbled at the end of the season, now you got the bowl game looming. They haven't performed well in the bowl games the last couple of years because of departures. That fan base needs a victory right now. And him coming back and announcing he's staying would be a victory. Yeah,
I think you need some momentum to go off into your season, and you need something to sell. Right. Because now you got a portal that's open. You're going to have a ton of players in there. And if you're Jake Dicker, there's some positions he wants to get better at. He's going to lose some guys like Wayshawn Parker, who's jumped into the portal. I also took that Wayshawn Parker thing as a positive, oddly, because it told me that, maybe the collective at Washington State knows that it has to go all in on Mateer. Yeah. And they didn't have money for Wayshawn Parker. And so I think you're going to see some money ball get played by schools like Washington State, Oregon State, Boise State in this next cycle, because they're really going to have to decide where to put their investment. And, like the Oakland A's with Billy Beane, they're going to have to, find an angle.
Dylan Gabriel, Travis Hunter, Genty, Cam Ward, your Heisman finalist. Speaking of Mateer, non-biased, do you think he should have been included?
I think had he finished stronger, I think it's really difficult when you're not playing the best competition down the stretch and you're losing those games. And for me, I think that's where he kind of faded. And because I think right after the Apple Cup, he was on my radar. I had him on my ballot at that point. And then as the season went on, the argument for him, like fantastic player, the argument for him started to disintegrate when Washington State lost games. And I think it's as simple as that. And I do think like the Heisman Trophy, I'm a voter, right? But the ballot had to be put in yesterday. That was the deadline. So that's too soon. Now we have this playoff. If I'm the Heisman Trust, Wilner and I were talking about this, move the thing back. Let the playoff become part of the season and part of how we judge players. Because if the ultimate goal is to get your team to the national title game and win it, the regular season isn't enough anymore. And so, I think the best player in the country, the guy who had the best year was Ashton Genty. I don't think Boise State's where they are without him. I think you take him off that team and they're nothing like this. Like that's a 5-loss team. And so I think Genty made the biggest difference and was the best player. But unfortunately, the sportsbook doesn't agree. And I think Fox and the propaganda machine that's firing her out there on ESPN doesn't agree either.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like I got to bet with a buddy of mine. I got Genty. He's got Hunter. We're both adamant that we're right. Now that I'm looking at the odds at Vegas, I'm like, shit, maybe I'm wrong. I'm with you. He was the best player in college football, was Ashton Genty.
Yeah, but I think the fact that they do all that odds and all that hype, and here's our Heisman watch list in week 2, I think it's all it detracts from the process because the voters are brainwashed. And the propaganda and the hype, and of course the players who play in the bigger conferences, the Power 4 conferences, are just going to get a lot more of that platform and exposure to voters. And you are just told over and over, you're a fool if you don't think Travis Hunter is the far and away the top pick. Well, I don't see it that way. I'm not revealing my whole ballot because I'm not supposed to, but I didn't see it that way in the end. I thought, wow, really nice year for Travis Hunter. Played both ways, remarkable, belongs there as a finalist, but he didn't have a better year than Ashton Genty. There's no way.
Yeah, no. What do you make of Bronco Mendenhall going to Utah State?
Good hire. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really sneaky good hire. He'll do well there. I think for the New World Pac-12, that's a good hire. It's a good move. Shows that Utah State's investing. He's going to have success there. He's been successful everywhere that he's been. And I thought Oregon State maybe should have looked at him when they had Jonathan Smith leave. I think Bronco probably should have got an interview. But I think it's a good move for Utah State and for Bronco. Gets him back in the game.
I want encourage people to go to your website. If you haven't subscribed to John's website, go do so. You have breaking news, you got columns, you have personal stories and features like the one that you featured about Walton and Beth Smith that's up there at johncanzano.com. It's what makes you such a talented writer. If you can give people maybe a cliff notes of the story, and I encourage people to go subscribe and read it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I tweeted out Walton Bev Smith 94 and 91 years old. They're readers. They're subscribers. And I got in an email exchange with Bev, a couple of years ago about, she was so excited for the season. Well, her husband, Walt, had been a school teacher and had for like 30 or 40 years taught kids and sort of poured himself into that. His vision was fading. They're in an assisted living home together, living together. And every day she would read him my column, which, come on. It gets me.
Sure.
I'm a small part of their day. And so she told me that what happened, every day they'd get the column and then she would get him in position and then other seniors would gather around and she'd read what I wrote that day. And so I wrote a column about sort of the simple stuff as it pertains to college football and how we're kind of all connected in this strange way. And, I got bad news on Friday because, he is 94 and I got a note in that he had passed away on Friday. And so I just retweeted the column. Here's a guy who poured himself into teaching kids and helping kids. And, I think those people are MVPs. And I did email with his wife last night. And I told her she's got a lifetime subscription. She's 91. I told her keep reading and that we were thinking about her. So some heartwarming stuff mixed in with the sports, the stuff that matters. We all know that.
When you take a step back and you hear someone say that to you, just a private moment.
Yeah.
Like how does that make you feel?
It's good. Look, I think we all get in this business because we love sports, but down deep, it's really about people and each other. And there's no greater feeling than being at a stadium alongside group of other people who are all rooting the same and you're all watching and sharing this experience. And so it really is a shared experience. And so the cool thing that's happened with the column, in the writing is that, the subscribers get it in their email inbox delivered every morning. They can just reply and all of a sudden we're in a conversation. Okay. And so this happens over and over. And I've got to meet so many people like, those two older people living in an assisted living home and the grocery checker down the street. And it's just, I've got to know so many people through that connection. And so when she says, she told me yesterday, she said, you are a big deal at this senior living center. And because she's reading that column every day to a group of elderly people who, in our culture, in our society often feel alienated and forgotten.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's so heartwarming. It made me want to drop in there and surprise her and see how she was doing.
You should go read one of your columns there one day.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
Let's
do the show. Let's take the show live.
It's great. I just, from a personal standpoint, when someone comes up to me and says, God, man, I love what you do. You just make me laugh every day or something like that.
It means so much.
I can't, I get so embarrassed about it at times when someone stops me and says that. And honestly, it doesn't happen much. but I'm just saying that when it does, I think anyone who gets recognized for the work they've done, but I'm in awe of it because I honestly think when I do this, and maybe for you as well, when you write and stuff and do the radio, I don't think anybody's watching or listening. I have this glass half empty, like, oh God, no one's going to be watching this. No one's going to listen to this. I think when you hear stuff like that, I think it causes me to take a step back and just to understand that you impact someone's day. Like, oh man, I have this job and it's terrible. I don't like it. But the hour that you're on or the column that I read makes me laugh, smile, like it kind of brightens up my day. Man, that's a heavy thing to handle sometimes.
It means so much to me when someone stops me and says, I'm a subscriber or I listen to you. Yeah. I try to tell them in that moment, in that passing moment in the airport, or, it happened to me. I was on the plane flying out to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. And I had a Duck fan walk by and he said, hey, I read you every day. And it means so much to me because it's very personal. But, I'm in my own head and my space writing that stuff. but all of a sudden it's out there, and you're connected with another person, and that person's not just reading me, they're supporting my family, Puck. Like, that means a lot to me.
It's very personal. I think radio, or this form of entertainment, and then also writing, I think it's really the three most personal, or the two most personal things I think you can do in terms of entertainment.
And I'll tell you this, you did this too, because you went out on your own. You're an entrepreneur, right? You're doing this. Mm-hmm. I did the same thing with my writing, and I tell people I work for you now, and I love that. I love not having a corporate entity in the middle trying to tell us how to do this, or interfering in a way that annoys and becomes a nuisance to the audience. It's just, it's you and your audience. It's me and my audience. Yeah. We're working for the people who are watching here.
That's right. No more 8-minute commercials. That's what I'm happy for. Happy that you join every week. The glass half empty always waits for the text. I'm done. It's never going to happen though, because you're a man of your word.
Don't worry about me, man. I'll be here when you need me.
You're the best. Thanks, John. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, man.
There he is, John Canzano. His weekly visit brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Big thanks to Zeke's best selection of pizzas and local craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Follow, again, John on X, on John Canzano BFT. On Blue Sky, just John Canzano. All of his work up at johncanzano.com, including that wonderful story on the Smiths. Go read it. It's just a story that he's done before, but releasing it because Walt had passed away. It is just beautiful. It's not even sports writing, even though it has to do with sports. It's just beautiful writing. Go check it out. And of course, listen to him. He does a radio show weekly down in Portland at 7:50, the game down there in Portland, Oregon. All right, before we wrap it up, I should mention, in case you came into that late, all of the episodes and that entire segment there with John will be up on YouTube. Go subscribe there, please. It helps. Also, leave a comment. Try to get to as many as we possibly can. And then also listen to it later. Apple, Spotify. If you're not subscribers there, please go subscribe. Download the episodes there. Apple and Spotify. And, of course, always up at pucksports.com. Let's get to Hey, What the Puck. Hey, What the Puck, as we do this every single day to wrap up the show. It's brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle, your restoration company that's going to let you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services. Locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when damages affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com. You know what John said there at the end? We do work for you. It's well said by John. I do this. We do this. All of the guests that come on. Jim comes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We do it for you. So we hope that you like it. We hope you like listening and watching to the program, because I'm having a blast doing it. And when we get to opening day, think about this one. We're on December 10th. We're not that far from opening day. When we get to opening day for baseball, 1 year that this little project's been going on. It's unbelievable. Time flies. This has been a year that has flown by. All right, so for Hey, What the Puck, if you were, we talked a little bit about this with Danny Kelly. If you're not following, and maybe you're not, I don't know, the current situation here with the Philadelphia Eagles, let me just get you caught up on what's happening. A.J. Brown, star wide receiver, okay? He's upset with his role in the passing game. He was critical of the passing game in their last victory over the Carolina Panthers. He was critical of Jalen Hurts. He was asked what's wrong with the offense, passing. So he threw his quarterback under the bus. Then you got defensive end Brandon Graham goes on a radio show, WIP, in Philadelphia, makes it worse by going on there and saying, hey, they have a strained relationship. They're not talking anymore. They're not friends. And I think Hurts is doing everything he can, but the guy complaining needs to be held a little bit more accountable. So he just throws gasoline on the fire, all right? Now, Graham, immediately after that, apologizes, calls into the station later to apologize. Didn't mean to air out all of their locker room gossip on the air. All right, Hurts completed 14 of 21, 100 yards, a couple touchdowns against Carolina. Passing game hasn't looked good. They're running the ball more. He is. Saquon Barkley's having an unbelievable season because they have an unbelievable running back. Brown's upset he wasn't targeted late in the not targeted until late in the second quarter. Hurts, after the game, asked about the passing game, said, they just did some things that kind of confuse us, but ultimately it's on me to get the passing game going. These guys have won 9 straight games. They are 11-2 on the season. They are, right now, the best football team in the NFL. They should win the whole thing. But you've got A.J. Brown. This is my problem with sports. And it's not just a nowadays problem. I'm not going to say it's not, because back in my day, this wouldn't happen. No, back in my day, this happened. This is the problem with egocentric, diva-like players who are more concerned about individual stats than team stats. And A.J. Brown is the guy I'd fucking despise in sports. He just is. I despise people like him. He's more concerned about individual statistics. And I know receivers want the ball more. They always think they're open. I get all that. You're winning. You're winning. Isn't that the goal? The goal is to win a championship. Your team has changed its offensive identity because it's better. They don't have to rely on a passing game. They can rely on running the ball. And when you get into the playoffs, AJ, you know what's going to happen? The teams that are going to run the ball better, teams that are going to control the clock with a good defense like you have and a solid running game and an unbelievable back like Barkley, you're going to win the fucking Super Bowl. You're going to raise the Lombardi Trophy. Are you going to be upset when you raise the Lombardi Trophy because you didn't get 9 targets in the Super Bowl? This is not how team sports is supposed to be. This is an individual complaining because he's upset that, yeah, we're winning, but I'm not getting mine. Would he be more happy with catches, more targets, more yards rather than winning? I think he would be. I think if they were, instead of, what are they, 10-2 right now? Instead of 10-2, they were 6-6, but he was leading in top 3 and top 5 in all categories. He'd be like, well, I'm doing my part, so I'm happy. He's 17th in the league in receiving. Okay, he's a great wide receiver. Would he rather be Jamar Chase? I would just ask this to Brown. Would you rather be Jamar Chase? Would you rather lead the league in receiving and be out of the playoffs? Would you rather be CeeDee Lamb or Garrett Wilson and lead the league in targets? They play on awful football teams. In fact, here are the top wide receivers in targets this year: Lamb, Wilson, Chase, Neighbors, Brock Bowers. What do they have in common? Losing. They're all on losing teams who are going to miss the playoffs. This type of stuff, his attitude, he should come out this week and apologize to everyone and accept blame. And you know what he should just say? Yeah, I'd like to get the ball more. As a competitor, we all want to get the ball more. But you know what the number one thing is right now? Yeah, my targets are down. The yards are down. Fine, touchdowns. We're winning. We've won 9 straight. We're the best team in football. And at the end of the day, if I get 1 target and 1 catch for 9 yards, but we won the Super Bowl, I'm happy, because that's the goal at the beginning of the year. The goal at the beginning of the year is not to lead the league in targets and receptions. A.J. Brown is the reason at times you can despise sports and despise individuals. For a guy that is more concerned about individual statistics than actually helping the team win and being happy that the team won. All right, that's Hey What the Puck, brought to you by Restoration One of North Seattle. Restoration Company lets you avoid the stress of water, fire, and mold damage with their property restoration services, locally owned and operated. Make them your first call when those damages, kiddos, affect your residential or commercial property. 206-817-8917. Visit them online at restoration1.com. All right, in case you missed anything, it is going to all be up on YouTube, the entire show. So if you're listening live, in case you missed it, you came in late. A lot of people come in late. Entire show goes up on YouTube. We take out the individual interviews. So Kelly, all of our guests will have individual videos and audio podcast as well. So full show up on YouTube, along with Danny Kelly, along with John Canzano. And then, of course, you can find everything up on Apple and Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And again, the one-stop shop, always up at pucksports.com. For those listening later on the podcast and watching later on YouTube, we go live every single day at 10 a.m. You can watch it YouTube live on YouTube, also on X, and you can listen to it. Download the Puck Sports mobile app on the iOS store, also Google Play for you Android users. All right, and be sure, QR code will take you to Puck's Posse community membership. Sign up to the Puck's Posse community membership. Just it's as little as $5 a month. You get a 10% discount if you sign up for a year. We'll hand out a $100 gift package to all members every single month. We've done 2 so far. It reminds me, I've got to get the December one. We've picked a winner, but I got to get the December one mailed out. Jeff, I'm going to do it today, Jeff. Writing it down right now. Again, you become a full member. Members get full access and VIP content. Go to pucksports.com. And you can click the link there and to sign up. And we'll be starting some new features very soon. Actually, in fact, this week we'll be starting a couple of new ideas. We'll be introducing something called Puck Bites, where I'll be, I don't know how the consistency will be. Just every now and again, just a quick little 10-minute audio version thrown up there just for you members. Maybe something that we missed earlier in the day that we get to later in the evening. And so, just something that, because stuff breaks during the afternoon and then we get in the evening and kind of wrap up the day. So we'll do that. Also, the Puck Speakeasy. We're going to do an interview every week with somebody in the sports. It doesn't have to always be sports. Just a little bit more in-depth interview. And we've got 2 projects all right now working in the books that'll be coming out fairly soon. All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow. It's a Wednesday edition. Rob Staten, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. We'll drop by to talk a little Seahawks. And then also we'll talk to Ryan Divish, Seattle Times, from the winter meetings coming up tomorrow. His weekly visit brought to you by Chalet Boat. We'll talk to you tomorrow. As always, first of all, thank you for watching and listening and supporting. It means a lot to me. And John was talking about it earlier. It means a lot to us. All right. Love all you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. We promise to be better.
No shoes, no dice.
Would anybody like to smoke some pot?
Yeah.
I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rub you. But you were born to rub me first.
What do you need my address for?
We'd like to send out a mailer.
Mother of mercy, I don't speak Japanese!